I love doing this show, and I don't think I've ever looked forward to doing a show like I am this one right here. I didn't want to sleep last night. I got up early. I was so excited because that was one of the best games I've ever watched, and we're going to break it all down on today's All NBA show. What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All NBA show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllCity. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, the host of Hoops Tonight over at The Volume. It's Jason Timpf. JT, I know you were buzzing last night. Did you even sleep? Have you slept yet?
I had a good night's sleep last night because I had a terrible night's sleep the night before. So I think out of just sheer exhaustion, I was able to be unconscious for a good amount of time last night. But I didn't watch much of the post-game coverage or anything. I've been trying to maintain some semblance of a normal sleep schedule. When I finish my live streams, I basically put my phone on Do Not Disturb and then try to go to sleep. And then I just consume everything in the morning. Yeah. And I will say between the quotes, obviously like that awesome Josh Hart quote after the game, thanking OG, to the film, like I did a film breakdown this morning for Hoops Tonight, which by the way was brutal to watch. This Spurs team is going to be kicking themselves all summer if they lose this series.
You're such a softie, man. I like it because it is true. Like you have no dog in this fight. You know, it's just you're watching two teams, but there is something to. Do you feel more for the team that came back? Do you feel more for the team that collapsed? And I honestly think it's like a personality, which one you are. I too always feel bad for the team. If I have no dog in the fight, I'm like, man, that's gotta hurt to blow that lead. But on the flip side, the comeback was one for the ages, man. It was an all-timer. And I'm going to start with this. I'm in Denver, small market. I'm a champion of the small market. I love, this part of the country. I have a personal connection to it. There is something, I know people hate it. There is something about the gravity that it feels with the Knicks and Madison Square Garden. In my lifetime, the Knicks have never been as relevant as they are right now. And I'm 42 years old. And when people all talk about, the heyday of the Garden and even in the 90s and different things, I kind of say, well, I've seen the Lakers, I've seen the Warriors. Honestly, the atmosphere of that game and just everything leading up to it and the amount of people that were there, it really did feel like an important cultural moment before the game even began. This whole series has felt like important cultural moments. Wemby, who's so clearly going to be a face of the league going forward, the Knicks and this run that they're on, and then the atmosphere. To me, I mean, do you agree with me? We've had great series, great final series even in recent history, but this one just feels like it's the center of the cultural universe.
Well, it certainly is. I think the numbers are hard to deny. Like, I think for the content space, all of us have been getting numbers in our content unlike anything we've seen in any playoff run, really this entire Spurs rise. And I think the Knicks, it was hard for them to follow how entertaining that Thunder series was. And I'd argue this has been better. I'd argue this has been a better series. And like, so obviously you have that element to it. The NBA released the data from game 3, and it was like the most watched NBA finals game literally since the 1998 Chicago Bulls series, which, by the way, side note, not to get on a random tangent here, but I think that's way more impressive now when you consider just the competition. Like the sheer number of content options that are available for Americans now is several orders of magnitude higher than what was available in 1998. So like to even come close to those numbers in as competitive a content space as it is now, like it is clear that this is the most resonant basketball moment in a very, very, very long time. And even just within that game, I would argue, because that was so funny listening to people complain about the officials, which I think has been a total non-story. Like, I think
we barely talked about it on here. I just don't care for it.
Exactly. I think it's been a well-officiated series. I think that for all the complaining about stuff that has favored the Spurs, one of the biggest dynamics of the series is how the Knicks have been beating the crap out of Wemby and how that has helped lead him to a lot of inefficiency around the rim, which was a big story of the game in the second half tonight. Like this, what actually had happened is down the stretch of game 2 and all of game 3 and most of game 4, the Spurs had been getting better shots on both ends of the floor than the Knicks had. And so as a result, like this felt like a pivotal game. Like it felt like if the Spurs had won 2-2 and to have just been playing a lot better, dating back even to a game they lost in game 2, and then to have 2 of the final 3 games at home, it just felt like it was a swing point in a lot of ways. And by the way, series ain't over, but like the Knicks winning that game, that was the one they had to win if they were going to win the title this year. It felt it was as close to a must-win as a must-win could be outside of an elimination game. And for them to, like, you win by 1 point on a crazy OG Anunoby tip-in. And what ends up like always sticking out to me when I watch games like that is like when I go back to watch the film is you win by 1 point and all of a sudden every little battle that you win along the way becomes so important.
Yep.
Like Cat gets back cut by Wemby on one of those like wide pin screens they tried to set for him where he's top locking, Wemby back cuts him, and Cat just fights back into the picture and just gives Wemby a little shove and it causes him to miss the layup. And it's like, that's a huge win in a 1 point game. Josh Hart randomly pressuring Dylan Harper and forcing him to fall out of bounds, fall into the backcourt and force a turnover. Like you start to look at every little possession and every little battle that the Knicks had to win to pull off that comeback. And it just was remarkable. I thought it was remarkable theater. I was glued to the television. I've been glued to the television this entire series. What a great moment for the NBA.
It really is, man.
This remarkable basketball on display.
It really is. And so now we go to our FanDuel game breakdown where we get kind of into the nitty-gritty here. It's always presented by FanDuel. If you're new to this channel, by the way, me and Tim Legler are doing this twice a week. He's back tomorrow. Legs had a travel day today, but he will be on the show tomorrow. And this game was good enough that we're going to talk about it 2 days in a row. I mean, it was that big. Legs was, of course, courtside for it, so I can't wait to hear all the stories about that. But we talk about the game. So if you like that, make sure you're subscribed and hop in the chat here. So here's how I'm going to start it. There were probably a dozen things that could have led the story, like a dozen headlines. As I'm watching the game, I sometimes think about what's the headline here. And let me walk through a handful of them. You have the Hart missed layup. 99% of the time, you get a chance for a breakaway layup. I think that would have been the first lead, too. So it was kind of this emotionally big moment where the comeback is happening, but you haven't took the lead. And he misses a layup. I thought he got fouled at first. Did not get fouled on the replay. And most times it's like that becomes a story we remember for 20 years. Wemby missed 2 free throws, 2 of them, and he looked like a guy that was about to miss 2 free throws. De'Aaron Fox had the layup blunder where he gets a steal, and maybe he should have dribbled it out, tries to go up for it. OG makes a crazy block. OG gets the tip in the final play, which will actually end up being the one that I think becomes the headline. Unbelievable tip and just effort from him. And then you have Karl-Anthony Towns tipping the inbound, which I didn't even catch till maybe 30, 45 minutes after the game. I didn't notice it. I just thought 1 second left, Hail Mary, bad pass. Karl-Anthony Towns gets a tip on the ball. All of those things, and I'm probably, maybe off the top of your head, you can name 1 or 2 other things that felt like in a normal game would have been the biggest swing moment of an entire game. And I just listed 7 of them. It's insane that all of those things happen in the span of like 3 minutes of clock time.
Yeah, I think back a couple other ones that add the Steph Castle play that gave the Spurs the lead. Josh Hart missed the box out. Right after he smoked the layup, he missed the box out. And there was a look on Josh Hart's face after that play where he was like, oh no, like that's a mistake. I cannot believe I just made that mistake. And it would have just
him
been
of all people.
Brutal. Yeah, him of all people to make like a focus rebounding mistake in a key spot late in the game. Also, I thought the Spurs missed a couple of great looks from 3 down the stretch of this game. Champagny missed one at the top of the key that was wide open.
Yeah.
Devin Vassell missed a couple of wide open ones off of the right side. Wemby had that play where he had back-to-back wide open 3s that he ended up missing. There was just a lot, like, for all the talk about the Spurs process, and it was bad, they also shot poorly in the second half relative to their shot quality. It was actually fascinating to look after the game. The story of the game was the Spurs shot him out of the arena, right? Actually, the Knicks shot 47% from 3 and the Spurs shot 40%. Like, the Knicks actually had a better game. Like, OG Anunoby hit 7 threes in this game. But it was clutch. Just every one of those possessions, like the Josh Hart play, it looked like he got caught between a dunk and a layup, which every basketball player who can dunk has been in that situation before, where you take off and you think you're going to be high enough to dunk it, so you have the ball in 2 hands, but then suddenly you're like, oh no, and then you go into the layup and it just kind of messes up your rhythm a little bit, and you throw it off the back rim. On the the De'Aaron Fox transition play. If he literally just holds the basketball, they win the game in all likelihood. He draws a foul, you go up 3, you're up 3 with 12 seconds left. You have one good defensive possession. You just take away the 3-point line. Literally, you just overplay the 3-point line.
Yeah.
And or heck, you could foul. You could intentionally foul. Like your odds of winning skyrocket if De'Aaron Fox either just calls a timeout or holds onto the ball there.
Here's the thing, though. I'm going to come to his defense. It's happening so fast. He's the fastest player in the league. He has a lead on the ball. Like, I think it's easy for us from a bird's eye point of view and with the benefit of hindsight to say pull it out. And clearly that would have been the better play and the heads up play just to do that. But I will say, you get a layup there, you also put the game away. And it was an incredible play by OG Anunoby to keep pace with him on that play. And I don't know if De'Aaron Fox, I think he felt very confident that he could get that shot on the backboard and get it off, like very confident. And OG just made a great play. So he did make a mistake, clearly, but I just can't kill him for that one because at least that one I understand.
The only reason why I disagree with you is because OG Anunoby has like 5 transition blocks in this series. Like, at a certain point, it's like, stop trying the guy. Like, stop trying the guy. He's clearly like the greatest role player ever. So like, can we all just chill out and stop testing OG Anunoby at the rim? The sideline out of bounds play, so I'm watching in the basement with Carly, and before the pass even goes up, I'm like, watch the inbounds. They have Karl Anthony Towns on the inbounds, and I was like, you have your shortest player inbounding, which I thought was another mistake from Mitch.
We see this a lot.
I disagreed with Mitch on both of the final 2 plays because on the one where OG has the tap in, as soon as you decide to double team Brunson, Brunson made a really smart play jacking up that shot, actually, because if you look off the ball, Cat, Mikal Bridges, and OG Anunoby are the 3 tallest players out of the 7 players that are underneath the basket after the shot goes up. Literally, you have 3 Spurs guards contending with OG, Mikal, and Cat. And like OG ends up not even matched up with anybody and has a clear runway. And yes, did the miss have to be in the right spot? And did OG have to make a heck of a play? Yes. But I would have just like, even if Wemby got switched out on him, I would have been like, at least we're matched up. We can box out. On the sideline out of bounds, I would have put in Harrison Barnes, or I would have put in Luke Cornett, or somebody that you trust that has some size that can pass. Because asking your shortest player to inbound with by the way, his left hand, he's a lefty player who was inbounding with his left hand.
You're right. This is
right into Cat.
You're right.
Right into Cat. And the play is drawn up for a lob. And by the way, the play is genius because Mitchell Robinson's not going to leave Wemby. He's had moments in the series contesting Wemby jump shots to win games. You know he's not leaving Wemby. Everyone, literally, Legs is on the broadcast like, I think they're going to have Wemby pop for a jump shot here. I'm saying to Carly, I'm like, I think they're going to have Wemby pop for a jump shot here. It is probably your safest play, but you have him set the back screen on Josh Hart, which you know they're not going to switch. Castle's wide open, but the play is broken before it even starts because you have your shortest player throwing not across his body, like at least switch the side and have him on the other side of the floor. So he's throwing with his left hand back here and he could kind of hook it or something. But to have your shortest player throwing directly into the tallest player for the Knicks, I thought was a pretty big game plan error there from Mitch Johnson.
This is a great detail. By the way, this action that they ran it's kind of common. It's not like, there's a handful of plays that you've seen around the league. I think this is an Eric Spoelstra special, and they've gotten some of these late game ones. And you're right, because it puts a unique pressure. Elevator screen, so a guy runs through and you have to guard the elevator first. And then you get that like little wedge action where it feels like the action's going to be for Wemby popping out, and that's what you're afraid of. If he catches the ball, he's going to get a clean look. And then you can slip to the basket with Castle. So it's a nice action because there really isn't a great way. You have to make quick decisions about which thing you're going to be most vulnerable to. And they make a great read on it. But I love your point about Harper throwing it in. And I hadn't thought about this one. You are right. Left-handed going this way is a weird angle and undersized. I saw somebody in the chat earlier say Adam's drink every time Adam mentions the Nuggets. Guys, I've watched every Nuggets game for 20 years. I have a deeper reservoir of memories from it. But it does remind me of 2009. Anthony Carter, very close game and a pivotal game too. Anthony Carter inbounds, tries to inbound over Lamar Odom. It's a turnover, and the Lakers win that game and go on to win the series because of it. So this is a big deal. Like, you have to be thoughtful about who you put there. And you're right that the size difference in those final moments mattered both on the inbound and on the rebound. and that's an important detail. If we
can I just a quick follow up for all the talk about the inexperience? I think we sometimes forget to attach that to coaching as well. Like, these are the kinds of errors that Mitch is making that I think will help him learn for the future. Like, he's drawn up 2 really bad 2-for-1 plays too. He had the one where De'Aaron Fox just walked into a jump shot over OG tonight or last night. He had another one in game 1 or game 2, I believe, where they similarly drew up the 2-for-1 play they drew up was just Wemby ISOs Mitch, and he just takes like a bad step back, where it's like, I understand the 2-for-1, but like add a little bit of something to it to make life a little bit easier. I think there are definitely some plays where Mitch Johnson's going to be kicking himself all summer, and that will help him become a better coach in the long run.
I mean, we'll see how this. We did this when it was 2-0, where it just felt like impossible that the Spurs could get back into this, and they did. And I think that we would be having a completely different conversation if this was 1 point different about how improbable this comeback was and how the Knicks now have no hope. So I don't want to pour dirt on the grave just yet, even though it feels insurmountable. But let's do this. Let's rewind and talk about why the Spurs built this lead, because another angle of this game is that the Spurs dominated more so than anybody has dominated in the series so far. They dominated the first half, and they did it seemingly like they had cracked and solved what the Knicks were doing. Now, a lot of this was really hot shooting, but they were getting wide open shots with beautiful offense. They were dissecting the Knicks defense. And I think this is going to sound crazy because this is the biggest comeback in finals history, and it is all those things. Even watching it at 29 points, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, in today's NBA, it almost sucks to be up by that much. I mean, every team would take it. But there is this weird thing when you're up by a lot because you're in such an offensive rhythm. That's why you're up. You're making shots and you're getting them off of the ball is popping and we're just carving them up. That's one of the hardest things, because to sustain it means you have to continue to move the ball. And ball movement feels like risk. And once you get up, you feel like, let's mitigate risk. Let's stop moving it. And you still have so much game time to play. Can you survive for 24 minutes if you go away, if you stop taking risks? And that was the exact moment I felt like the Spurs found themselves in. Beautiful offensive process, dominant performance, and now it's like, well, let's be cautious now going forward. Let's maybe slow things down a little bit. And it was a 24-minute bleed.
Yeah, it's so funny because I thought there was a lot of talk about the Spurs settling in the second half, and there definitely were some really bad settles. I want to be clear, but I thought it was deeper than that, in the sense that every time you blow that big of a lead, it's so quick. Usually people are so quick to be like, oh, it's this guy's fault, or it's that guy's fault, or this team did this, or this team did that. To blow a 29-point lead, everything has to go wrong.
All of it.
Everything has to go wrong. And where I got frustrated when I watched the film, I think the part of the game that the Spurs are really going to be kicking themselves about is the first run. Because there's 2 runs there, right? You're up 20 with 9.5 minutes left. That was the big one late in the game. But they gave up a 16-0 run in the third quarter, which was the initial run that breathed life into the Knicks and made them think that they could win. And during that stretch, it was like they stopped running their stuff. Like, they stopped running their stuff, and they were like playing pickup for a few minutes there. And like, what they were doing in the first half, and this is just a very simple dynamic, and it's important to remember because it's the only chance the Spurs have to win the series. When they run their stuff, which is mainly their double drag set and their 45 set, which is where they set the 2 pinch screens around De'Aaron Fox or whoever it is at the top of the key. When they run that set, and one of those 2 sets, and they run it well, meaning like the guard takes time for the screeners to get into position, the screeners set good screens. So usually what will happen is like the first guard will set a screen, and if he sets a good screen, then Wemby will slip. Wemby won't even set the second one if the first screen hits. But if the first screen doesn't hit, Wemby will linger and wait for him to come off of that second screen. But when they actually take their time to set solid screens, and that guard then looks to attack, like to get downhill off of the screen, it creates this very simple dynamic where the Knicks defense reacts, and you either have something for the guard getting downhill, Wemby on the lob, or you have the kick out pass to the perimeter for an open shooter. when they do that, there's a rhythm and a flow, and they get great looks, and they're pretty hard to guard because of how much rim pressure they apply from the guard position.
And real quick, and what you're describing here are easy reads. And I'm not saying they're easy plays to make, but it's that you know what you're reading. You're reading this, this, or this. And it requires, what you're saying is it requires the right setup, the executing the first layer so the other layers become easy.
Exactly, because very simply, when the guard does turn the corner there, it engages Cat as the screen defender, which then forces the Knicks to tag Wemby, which leaves that corner skip open for a good shot. The two things that I thought went wrong for the Spurs during the early phase of the third quarter where they really started to lose control was, one, possessions where they just didn't run anything. Like, there were a lot of possessions where, it's just passing the ball around the perimeter, jack up a shot, really weird process. Like, there was a crazy one where, like, Dylan Harper has Jalen Brunson on a switch. And instead of just attacking Jalen Brunson, he swings it to Devin Vassell against OG Anunoby, who jacks up a 3 with 12 on the shot clock against a contest and almost falls over. And it's like, that's just really bad process. And the second piece of it was, I thought the Spurs guards, and credit the Knicks for their ball pressure here, but I thought the Spurs guards really started to rush and dribble before the screeners could get set. And there were a lot of these sequences where the Spurs guards are panicking and dribbling before Wemby or before whoever the guard is setting the screen has a chance to get set, so that Jose Alvarado can easily get over the top, or OG Anunoby can easily get over the top, because no one's actually setting any sort of screen, which then causes the play to break down, and now you're just passing the ball around the perimeter and someone's jacking up a bad shot a few seconds later. There were so many of those types of execution errors. Another big one that really stood out to me is, like, when the Spurs guards did get a screen and start to turn the corner, so much of quick picking up their dribble. Fox had that really bad one that he had the turnover where he just picked up his dribble and threw it back, and Josh Hart stole it. That was for the layup that Josh Hart smoked.
Right.
He had a really bad pocket pass on one where he picked up his dribble early. Steph Castle had one in the second half where he threw a really bad lob to Wemby because he didn't even look to attack as he was getting downhill. I just thought at every level of the Spurs offense, between the screening, the timing of the screens, the guards actually looking to attack downhill, and even just the diligence of running their sets, I just thought the Spurs lost their composure in the second half and wasted way too many possessions. And again, when you lose by one, you want to just be like, man, 2 or 3 more possessions where you just run your stuff right and you're out of there with a 2-2 tie.
Two things you're talking about here. The first one is being afraid to make mistakes leads to mistakes. And I think that's when you talk about Fox picking up his dribble, there is a level of when you're playing an even game or from behind, you understand you have to take risk. I have to be aggressive here. And if I have to pick up my dribble late, I'm going to make the pass. When you're up and you start to say, well, we can't lose this unless we make mistakes, so I'm just going to pick up early and, try to get over. All of a sudden, now you put yourself in worse situations and you're off, you're not on the same page. And we actually saw that a handful of times. I think one of the ones you're talking about, Wemby screens and dives hard, but he doesn't look for the ball. Yeah. And I think Fox was anticipating, or maybe he popped and Fox was anticipating the roll, so he just gives the pass there. And it's like, in both cases, guys were trying to play it safe, and safety led to the turnover. Mm-hmm. The first thing you said, though, I think is the more interesting one, and this is where the Knicks are so impressive to me. This has been such a great playoffs, and if they go on to win this, I just think it'll be that they kind of became a team that was so worthy of the moments that they're having. Because part of this is experience teaches you how to make little adjustments on every play. If they do this, I have to do that. This kind of coverage, I do this. Oh, this kind of physicality, I do this. And what you're talking about is the Spurs kind of fell into a pre-scripted routine of, like, I'm going to slip here. I'm going to set the screen here. And not necessarily reading, well, they're doing this to me, so I need to adjust. The Knicks are the opposite. The Knicks just seem to understand the process that it takes. Sometimes they make shots, sometimes they don't, so they'll fall down or they'll go up big. But they understand how to read every single possession. If they're guarding me this way, we adjust this way. The ball has to find this spot. And that's what I think makes great teams. And when you get to this level of the playoffs, where the level of play has been so high for so long that you're so locked in, a veteran smart team can read these without mistake for 48 minutes. And to me, that was the difference between the two teams. The Spurs, when things started to get off of out of rhythm, the Spurs were making wrong reads, and they were making wrong reads in the direction of safety and being conservative. The Knicks never changed their process. They just kept understanding where do we have to put pressure on the defense, and then guys just made incredible shots. You mentioned OG's threes. He had so many clutch plays in this one, but he had a bunch of clutch threes too that as you rewatch the game, if he misses any of them, the game never gets close enough to have the finish that it has. But they made so many of those shots down the stretch that just kept them with a chance, kept the door open until the final seconds.
Yeah, they made just about every right read. When I was watching the film, like every possession, they made the right read. There was a certain amount of like Jalen Brunson kind of forcing the issue in the first 3 games, and game 3 in particular, there were just a lot of possessions where he dribbled the air out of the basketball and missed some really easy reads. Brunson's game management in the second half of this game was perfect. He just took every single advantage that the defense gave him and just capitalized on it quickly with basic, simple reads. Obviously, down the stretch, they end up going to Jose Alvarado, and it created this kind of interesting dynamic where, you know, Brunson gets a right-handed driving layup on Champagnie on a play where Wemby stays attached to Cat up at the top of the key. And from that point forward, every single time Cat went to the top, the Spurs just sent a different guard up with Cat to switch the ball screen. And it created this really fascinating chess match where essentially they would come up to screen with Cat, and then they'd immediately have Cat relocate, and Jose Alvarado would come up to set the screen to try to force Wemby to come up in the second screen, because ultimately when they would have the side cleared, as Wemby would send up whoever it was that was to guard Cat, the guy usually was Vassell, whoever was guarding Alvarado, they'd send him up to guard Cat. There wouldn't be another guard for Wemby to wave up, so he would have no choice but to go up on the second screen with Alvarado. Then from there, they were defending it like a high drop. They were effectively briefly doubling Brunson with Wemby, which created these rotation situations, these 4-on-3s on the backside, which all series long, the Knicks have been amazing in their 4-on-3s. But like all sorts of just like little things like, oh, Josh Hart sets a beautiful pin screen on Fox that gets OG a wide open 3 in the right corner. Or Jose Alvarado on a random play gets Julian Champagnie on an island and hits him with a nasty spin move. And literally you could see him. He drives down the right lane line, goes to a retreat dribble and fakes like he's going to dribble out, which gets Wemby to bail to the corner because he thinks he's got a Jose under control. And he just spins back over his left shoulder and gets the open layup. The OG Anunoby catch and shoot threes that were massively clutch. Because like there were some tough shots. Like Brunson hits the huge 3 over Wemby. Brunson hits that crazy floater over Steph Castle. Just a disgusting shot against one of the best perimeter defenders in the league.
Those are like back-to-back, too, by the way. That's just like you're watching this and you're like, oh, my God, Brunson. It's just Brunson time. You know he's going to make these.
Just, again, the clutchest dude in the league. Karl Anthony Towns hits 2 really tough ones, the one over Keldon in the left wing, and then he hits one over Wemby. But other than that, there were no tough shots. It was it was open catch and shoot threes. And it was the driving layup for Alvarado, driving layups for Brunson on the handful of possessions where he was able to get space. Like they kind of picked the Spurs apart a little bit there down the stretch of that game for open look after open look. And that's the concerning part. And there are some things I noticed on the film. Like there was one possession where they had, when Vassell went up to switch off of Cat, they let Cat clear and Vassell lingered and then just guarded Alvarado. And then he switched the second one. And like that was where I was like, okay, like the Spurs have some counters here that they can run, because when you clear the side, it kind of causes congestion on the weak side, which makes it easier to rotate out. And so I actually think the Knicks might have to run a variation of that where they occupy both corners. And that's just the chess match piece of it. But ultimately, the Knicks are just so much better in these slowdown situations about having a ball handler that creates a simple advantage and then just passing through it for a great look. Whereas on the other end of the floor, you have a young team that doesn't have a rock solid ball handler. The closest thing is Fox, but everyone's like, oh, well, why not Harper? Harper's a rookie. You think that's going to be perfect?
I'd still take it, though.
I get it. But the point is, it's like, Fox is maybe the best of several flawed options, whereas Brunson is a rock-solid option. And that is really the pivot point of this series at the end of all these clutch games.
you think about the value of just wing players in general, and obviously OG just had an unbelievable game and impacted it in all these different ways. But I think for the Spurs, because I think Fox is a good ball handler. I think Castle and Harper are good secondary ball handlers and could handle it. And there's things they could have done with the talent that they have to have secured this game beyond that. But I do think that you look at the value of wing players, and in particular wings who can control the ball, because that is one thing. If you're up 29 points, even if you're playing conservative, even if you're missing shots and doing all of this, if you can dictate tempo, then you can kind of control the game. And wing players can do that better than guard players. Now, Brunson can do it really well, but he's an outlier. He's an especially unique player who can control tempo. But you're talking about your Paul Georges and Kawhis and LeBrons and Lukas, those types of guys that if you can give them the ball, they can at least slow it down, get the exact shots that they want. And the Spurs didn't have the ability to do that. But real quick, because we have to take a break, but I do have to say one thing. You just talked about this huge comeback, and you mentioned the Brunson shots, the Karl-Anthony Towns shot, and you're like, other than that, they were rhythm shots. And you have a point. They were able to get good process. But you're also talking about three of the best shots. Like
I know, glossing over them.
Other than Brunson's two most improbable shots under incredible defense, just absolutely nails. Other than that, and it's like, man, I can't other than that because those shots were so big. All right, let's take a break, though. There's more on this, and I want to talk about the Alvarado piece, which I think is really fascinating about this series. And probably, in my opinion, will contextualize what happens in Game 5, that adjustment. We'll talk about it on the other side. What games did you have when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up? How about now? Are you thinking about starting your own business or maybe a side hustle? Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Shopify even powers the All City merch store. That's right. We have a merch store. We have some of the best hats, by the way. If you're just a hat person, we have some of the best hats on our merch store. And Shopify has you covered with website creation, product descriptions, email and social media marketing, and more. They also have AI tools designed to help you maximize sales. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into... with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/allcity. That's shopify.com/allcity. I also want to tell you guys about Kalshi. The playoffs are here. Maybe not for much longer. As little as could be done this weekend, or hopefully we get this all the way through next week. I'm praying for it. On Kalshi, you can trade every single playoff game, every series, the conference finals, and the championship. I think it's been cool watching these Kalshi odds because you really do see the swings. Right now, the New York Knicks are trading at 81% chance to win the NBA Finals. 81% still feels low to me for a team up 3-1. San Antonio at 20%. I guess all 4 of these games, though, have been razor thin. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For limited time, download the Kalshi app and use the code ALLNBA to get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI, Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. Back here, segment 2. I'm with Jason Timpf. We're going through some of the details of this game. And we're going to miss some details, man, because there's so much that happened here and we only have an hour. But I do want to talk about the Jose Alvarado piece because Legs and I, in our previous shows, we were previewing this game. We talked about the importance of having secondary ball handlers because in Game 3, I thought one of the things that helped the Spurs win was the ability to wear down Brunson with full court pressure. And then you get into a half court, and where do you go? Shot clock's drained. Brunson dribbles the air out of the ball because there's hardly any time left. You put a secondary ball handler on, and one, it does allow Brunson to be off ball in just the bring up portion of the game. And I think that mattered. But more to the point, you quickly alluded to something that I think was very important. One of the questions is, how can we draw Wemby out of the paint? Early on in the series, it was Karl-Anthony Towns' three-point shot making and, more importantly, shot fake, draw him out, drive to the basket, and get to the paint. And it worked. But the Spurs have gotten better as the series has gone on at leaving Wemby in the paint, finding ways to pre-switch so that he doesn't have to follow Cat out there, using other guys on Cat. And it worked. And I think it was a huge factor in why the Spurs have bounced back in the series. Alvarado changed that in the half court, not just bringing the ball up the court, but they would send the double screen, basically. They'd send one guy to screen. Wemby would switch off, so it'd be Cat, switch off. And then Alvarado would go and set the second one, and now it's like he has to step out. So I thought just that action allowed for Wemby to have to leave his comfort zone, come out on the perimeter, and then what made Alvarado so good at this is he knew what to do once that happened. Wemby coming out will blow up the play. Okay, we did that, but now he's out of position. And Alvarado did such a good job of then turning that into, now you have to guard me, let me get 2 feet in the paint and get the Spurs in a rotation they don't want to be in. And to me, that was the biggest tactical story of this game. Obviously, the comeback's the big story, but that was the tactical story is Jose Alvarado can lure Wemby out of the paint now, and that'll be something the Spurs have to figure out.
Yeah, I thought his speed really was the biggest difference between him and Mikal, where like in game 3 in particular, I thought Mikal got a little physically overwhelmed, especially in the Steph Castle matchup. Steph just kind of just shucks him off of his body because he's just so much bigger and stronger than him. And as we've talked about, like that's where the Spurs are at their best. They're kind of a power team at heart on the perimeter. But the thing that they're kind of vulnerable to is speed. They're vulnerable to just like these little fast guys. That's why they struggled with Jared McCain so much in the conference finals. It's why it was such a big deal that AJ Mitchell ended up getting hurt in that series. The Jose brings like, it's not just that he goes up and sets that second screen. It's that he sprints into it. He sprints into that screen and he just runs up like a little Tasmanian devil and sets a pick. And it just kind of causes this reaction from the Spurs. And there's a shot making piece. Like he hits a huge corner 3 that starts the run. Like when they went up 20, 95-75 after Wemby had that crazy like triple tip in play, he hits a big corner 3. He had another huge corner 3 late in the game off of a guard screen that the Spurs probably should have switched, and they didn't, and they lingered with Brunson, and he had a wide open 3. We talked about that little move on Champagnie. Like Mikal Bridges tried to put the ball on the floor and score late in this game and was missing some tough middies because of the fact that he doesn't really have an advantage against these Spurs perimeter defenders. Jose Alvarado is legitimately too fast for him, especially Champagnie. And that gives him like it's a ball handling depth thing because it gives you another ball handler to help manage pressure alongside Jalen Brunson. And there's just an overall speed increase on the floor. He brings shot making. Mikal certainly can make shots too, but he brings the same level of shot making. I thought defensively his pressure was better because again, he's able to kind of like stay attached to these guys a lot better than Mikal Bridges can. It's not necessarily always going to be Mikal. There's a version of this game where it ends up being, him instead of Josh Hart. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different variations, but by adding speed, ball handling, and shooting to the lineup, it just makes it that much harder for the Spurs to guard. Now, the fascinating piece to me is the counters. And again, to your point, the shots that those guys made were super impressive. The Brunson pull-up 3, the Brunson floater, the Cat step-back 3. I'm generally a believer that it's hard to lose a game, especially with a 20-point lead, to those kinds of shots. To me,
you have to make so many of them, yeah.
You have to make so many of them. The thing that I think the Spurs have to clean up are the easy open ones. And it comes down to a couple different things. One, like we talked about earlier, all I would do is when Cat goes to set the first screen and you send Vassell up with him off of Alvarado, as Cat clears, just let him clear. You're loaded up on that side. He's not open. Steph Castle's guarding, I think OG or whoever it is, right there at the top of the key on the same sequence. So like, let Cat clear, have Vassell just stay, and then guard Alvarado so that Wemby can stay back. That's the first thing that I would do.
Real quick though, before you move on, because I do like this point. Some of this is coaching, right? You have a timeout or something, but this is also what I was talking about earlier. This is why experience matters, is because I think those are also things that you just see. Like the Spurs will probably never forget that because they've seen it now and they lost a game to it. And when you're a veteran team, you don't need necessarily timeouts for that. You kind of read like, okay, this is almost a decoy action. Him releasing feels like we're supposed to chase him, but he's releasing into a crowd. And so
he's releasing into a crowd. Exactly.
And so like the more veteran you are, the more you just have experience and understand not to overreact. You might get burned once or twice, but you don't get burned for an entire quarter.
Yeah, I was talking about this actually in our mailbag questions last night because everyone was like, "Oh, how much is Mitch Johnson to blame?" And I actually blame Mitch more for the late game stuff, the 2 plays that we talked about, the doubling Brunson and then the having Harper inbound. Yeah. But like I'm a big believer in like the players have to solve some of this stuff themselves in the game.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this is where it's important to have coaches on the floor. And this is why people talk about young teams struggling to win. And by the way, like it's impossible now. The one thing I'll cut the young Spurs some slack, even though young players made mistakes too, is it's kind of crazy that most of the clutch mistakes in the series have been made by their most veteran guard, which is
we're going to talk about it. We still have to get to him in a sec, but
yeah, because he had a brutally bad play in game 1 too, where he fouled Mikal Bridges in a 2-point game late. But like so again, Cat's going to clear, but he's clearing into a crowd, so let him clear. That's the first piece of it. The second piece of it is like when they run a guard screen with Vassell and Harper as the two defenders, just switch it. Like they gave up a wide open 3 to Jose Alvarado on a basic guard screen at the top that Jose Alvarado hit. And it's like, again, I'm okay with Brunson hitting a heavily contested shot over the top of Wemby or over Steph Castle. Like you've kind of been controlling the series when Brunson has hijacked things and taken tough shots. Like that's hard to sustain. To me, it's you've got to clean up the execution errors on defense that concede wide open shots. And a lot of those come down to like just basic things like not switching a basic guard screen, or again, they had a play. Remember the play I just talked about, the sequence I talked about, like letting Cat clear, leaving Vassell on the strong side. They did that once. They did it once, and then they stopped doing it. And like, there's a certain amount of that where like you struggle to replicate when you're a young team. You struggle to identify what's working and just keep doing it, and that can be a little concerning. But I do think that there's some stuff that the Spurs can clean up, because ultimately, what's the battle of this series? The battle of the series moving forward is what we just talked about. Can the Spurs run their stuff, set good screens, time their screens, have the guards actually look to attack downhill, take advantage of the simple reads, take good catch and shoot looks, take the opportunities at the rim that are there. And then on the other end of the floor, they have to stay out of rotation and force Brunson to make tough shots. And so ultimately that chess match and figuring out how to guard the Knicks when they try to space the floor like that it's the key to the series. Because again, you said it earlier, this thing ain't over. Yes, the Knicks have a huge advantage, but like the Spurs have played really well in this series. They could very easily be 2-2 or even up 3-1 at this point.
I think you could make a case it could have been 4-0 either way. This is how good this series is, that you go back at all of these games and say, man, it was a 1% game. And just 1% in this direction, either team would have won. Could have been a sweep either direction.
Yeah, and they have 2 of the last 3 games at home.
Yeah.
And they just had a series where they beat the Thunder at home and then rolled up into OKC in a game 7 and beat them. Like wire to wire beat them. Right. So like, so this thing is not over. They just have significantly trimmed into their margin of error.
Yeah. Let's I want to go my last thing for the Knicks, and then I do want to talk about De'Aaron Fox, and then I want to talk about the MVP of the finals because I think it's actually interesting. But first, I've given this theory on the show maybe 5 or 6 times over the years, and it's my theory about the champion. You can grade your championship case based on 3 things, and they really come together in the finals. The first one is talent, and this includes coaching talent, player talent, variety of talent. Like you have enough talent. That's obvious. The second one is connection. So first of all, if you go to talent, I don't know who the more talented team is. I think they're pretty even, to quite frankly. They're both very talented teams, and they have a lot of different types of talent. So I don't think there is a meaningful edge in the talent direction between these two teams. You go to connection. I think both teams have played incredibly connected ball on both ends of the floor throughout this playoff run. I think the Knicks probably have a leg up here, but even in game 3, I think they lost connection, and that was part of why they lost that game. So they're not perfect there, but both teams are very, very good. The last one is resolve or toughness, whatever you want to say. And what I will say about the Knicks, if they go on to win this one, I think they're one of the most resilient teams I've ever watched. Multiple 20-point comebacks in this playoff run, and it never felt fluky. Things have to go your way, but they just always feel like they're in it. And I think a lot of this is Jalen Brunson's demeanor and just how calm he looks under pressure. I mean, some of it is he is calm, and some of it is he exudes calmness. You just watch him, and he's not even screaming, he's not flexing. He just has this he looks like a panther, just ready, just calmly looking at his prey. He's unbelievable. And so to me, those are the 3: talent, connection, and toughness. And I think connection and toughness, the Knicks rate out among the top of all the teams we've been watching over the last 20 years. They just check those boxes so fully, in my opinion.
No, I love it. You got to have good basketball players, but you also have to be able to play better than you are on paper. Like
Yep.
you got to be more than the sum of your parts. And then the toughness piece to me, like, I was talking about this on my show last night. Like, when I was talking about the idea of like the early third quarter run where the Spurs kind of first lost control. There's a certain to me, the toughness is like we play our style of basketball every possession, regardless of what the score is.
And outcome. Like we're not
outcome.
making shots, but we know we're getting the shots and we just stick to it.
Yeah, or like frankly, like you talk about toughness, like the Spurs played really good in the first half, but they also shot just so well. And it's like that's got to be so discouraging. And there is even tough shots, and like there were legitimately tough shots that they made during that run. Like De'Aaron Fox had like a crazy step back three over the top of Landry Shamet on the left corner. Like there were tough shots in there too. And you weather that storm and understand we play our basketball, but to me it synthesizes down to a valuing of each individual possession, essentially understanding like every little battle matters. Every little win that we get on any individual possession can kind of coalesce into a win in the big picture. And that to me requires a certain amount of basketball character. And like, like you can't, they're not dead until they're dead. Essentially that funnels down to a valuing of every single possession, because if the Knicks played loose in that third quarter, they would not have come back even if the Spurs were playing loose. It requires a certain no, we're going to play the way we play no matter what. Eventually, we're going to catch a break and make a little run here and hit 2 or 3 shots in a row, and suddenly the crowd will be behind us, and then we'll have an opportunity to pull this thing out.
It's unbelievable, man. The last thing here, I do want to talk Fox in a second, but we talk about Finals MVP case. I think there's 3 legitimate cases here. And I would say this. I think Finals MVP is up for grabs. I still think, however this series concludes, can switch it in people's favor. But let me give you the case for all of them here. For OG Anunoby, unbelievable big shots and big plays in multiple games, but this one, none more so than this one, and you have a literal game winner. And by the way, that tip in.
Insane.
If you replicate that tip in, he did everything right. Like you said, the ball bounced perfectly. He gets the runway. Everything. And even still, I think if you simulated that 10 times, he maybe makes 5 of them, because it's really a controlled slapping at the ball. It's not completely chaotic, but at the same time, it's not like he grabbed it and laid it in or grabbed it and shot it. He kind of just gets to tap it in the direction of where it needs to go, and it was perfect. So he has those. He blocks Cat, by the way, blocks Fox, by the way, which is also one of the biggest plays of this entire series. He's had a huge impact on Wemby individually, both the scoring on him and being able to guard him. So he is taking on enormous assignments. He's averaging 1.35 points per direct touch, most of any player with 500 plus touches in a single playoff run. That's crazy. OG has a super strong case, in my opinion. Karl-Anthony Towns, especially early in the series, causes Wemby problems. And while the Spurs have adjusted to Karl-Anthony Towns as the series has gone on, those adjustments do come at a cost that maybe don't directly reflect in his stat line, but he is putting a pressure on them, and he was so good early. And then Brunson has just had so many clutch moments, and he's the best player. I think I lean towards Brunson because I lean towards, if it's tough, you just give it to the best player. But I actually think all 3 of these guys at this moment have at least a case for it. And if one of them had an especially huge closeout game 5, I think all 3 of them have a chance to win it.
Yeah, I agree with you that they all have a chance. I think I'd put Cat in third now, just because of how poorly he scored the basketball over the last couple of games. But I do think that Cat's case centers on the fact that he has just done a wonderful job guarding Victor Wembanyama. It's just been one of the biggest pivot points of the series. His ability to essentially render Wemby useless as an ISO player has forced the Spurs to lean on their guards more, and the guards are young and flawed. And so it's been a big swing in this series. The reason why I lean Brunson to is I think OG's case is better than, say, Andre Iguodala's in 2015. I do think that's better.
The comp here. That's definitely the comp.
It's similar to me in the sense that part of the reason he has 33 last night is he gets 7 threes. And I think one of them was a pretty tough pull-up, but most of them were open catch-and-shoot threes. And the open catch-and-shoot threes stem from Jalen Brunson's ability to get the defense in rotation.
Right.
And that's not to undercut the stuff he did. The tap-in is unbelievable. The defensive plays in transition, namely the one on De'Aaron Fox last night. I do think it's a better version of Andre Iguodala's case, but I don't think Andre Iguodala should have won MVP in 2015. And I think ultimately, and here's the other thing too that complicates it. Like, I think Steph, even as bad as he was for stretches of 2015, is had a better series than Brunson has had in this series. Like, Brunson was frankly pretty bad in the first 3 games, but because he made enough clutch shots between the handful of clutch plays he made in game 1, the big step back jumper he hit to tie the game in game 2, I think, and then obviously last night, I think Brunson's made enough clutch plays when you kind of combine it with the advantage creation. And then to put it very simply, that second half from Brunson was the best stretch that any player has had at any point in the series. Like, he just was fantastic in the second half. And it was the pivotal game of the series for all the reasons we talked about earlier in the show. So I do lean Brunson by a pretty decent margin, but I agree with you between, like, Cat's job on Wemby kind of reminds me of Tatum's defensive job in the finals in 2024, where it's like it's kind of gliding under the radar, but his ability to guard Dallas's centers and switch pick and rolls is a huge part of what's shutting down Dallas's offense. Similarly, like, Cat's job on Wemby is really underrated. OG's made all these big plays, but I think Brunson last night, with what he did in such a pivotal game, gave himself a pretty substantial advantage in the finals MVP debate.
What I like about this and why it compares to the Warriors, the 2015 Warriors in particular, is it really is a credit to the Knicks that this is a conversation, because you're talking about, yes, Brunson is in large ways the engine of it, but they are such a connected team that 3 guys can have the chance for being the most important player on any given night just by virtue of what they're contributing to it. So it's not even a knock on any of these guys. And I agree with you. To me, I watched that series and thought Iggy was great. What he did with LeBron was great, but Steph is the one that stirred everything. Last topic here before we move on. Actually, I got a couple more, but De'Aaron Fox. They are in a weird spot, man, the Spurs are, in that he obviously has an important role for them, but I don't know that he can be the guy that they need in those moments. You mentioned just the point guard play. And they have this guy in Dylan Harper that I think you're scared about, like, especially now that you're facing elimination, of how much do we rely on him, because he will be aggressive. The thing we talk about, conservative, don't make mistakes versus aggressive, Harper will be aggressive and will make mistakes in it. But there's part of me that wonders, you've seen the De'Aaron Fox example of this, and I wonder if, in a weird way, you actually need to change your identity late in games, because I don't trust the Spurs' identity offensively late in games. And maybe you have to trade it to just handle the risk-reward upside of putting the ball in Harper's hands a little bit more in those moments. I'm just a huge Harper fan, so I'm overlooking some of his flaws, but at the same time, he represents the will that you need in those moments, the fearlessness that you need in those moments. And I do wonder if going forward, what late game situations look like for the Spurs, and if it switches at all and tilts a little bit away from Fox here going forward.
Yeah, I have been coming further and further to this side of the conversation as the series has progressed, because on the one hand, again, I do think it's a little bit more complicated because Harper's a rookie, because Steph Castle can't shoot, that it becomes a little bit more complicated than just, Harper's better than Fox, we should play through Fox. Where I think it gets interesting is when you look at the matchups. So, like, OG Anunoby, because Mikal Bridges is off the floor, ends up getting the primary defensive matchup against Fox and really does just a great job against him. And it was a team issue too, because I didn't think they did a good enough job screening OG down the stretch, but still, OG is this incredibly impactful perimeter defender. There were 2 plays where Steph Castle drew fouls on Jose Alvarado late in the game on drives. And it's because Jose's a little overwhelmed physically in the matchup. It wasn't his normal matchup. Josh Hart was guarding Steph for the most part, but they were transition cross matches. And I think also it had to do with just, it was a little bit earlier in the fourth quarter before the closing lineups were in. I've been talking about this all series, and I mean it sincerely. I think it's time to bench Julian Champagnie at the end of these games and to put Dylan Harper in the game. If for no reason, then to cause a matchup issue. So if the Knicks, are going to play Jose Alvarado, Jalen Brunson's going to guard Devin Vassell. That means Jose Alvarado has to guard Dylan Harper. And if Steph Castle's being guarded by Josh Hart and Fox is being guarded by OG Anunoby, all of a sudden Dylan Harper against specifically Jose Alvarado is just a really good matchup for the Spurs to attack. So by virtue of putting your 4 best offensive guards on the floor, it forces the smaller, undersized Alvarado to guard a power guard in Harper, which I think gives you just a better matchup to attack. So to me, it's like in a vacuum, do I think Fox is the best option? Yes, because I do think Harper's a rookie, and I think Steph Castle will just face a bunch of unders and they'll bait him into jump shots. But by virtue of playing all 3 of them together, you can configure things in a way that gives Harper specifically a very advantageous matchup so that he can look to be aggressive in those situations and give you some better shots. So I think I've been calling for this all series, and I know the lineup data is a little tricky, but for the 3 guards, but it's because they usually have played him with somebody other than Vassell. It's specifically all 4 guards. I want Vassell, Harper, Castle, and Fox all together to force the Knicks to guard one of their ball handlers with an inferior, smaller guard, which then can open up the opportunity for more mismatch attacking on that end of the floor.
Well, we didn't even mention, and we don't have time, but Wemby playing 44 minutes is also a big thing here. If you have a 29-point lead, you can't play your star player that many minutes. And we have actually seen some of your big collapses in playoffs, not just finals, but in the playoffs over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Oftentimes, in those big leads, star players are just on the floor for too long. You're up 29, you don't want it to fall to 20, but sometimes if you fall to 20 and you put Wemby back in the game, it doesn't feel like you just lost 10 points of a lead. It feels like we survived a bench stint. Whereas if he's on the floor and that happens, you feel like you just blew, a quarter or a third of your lead. All right, we got to close out the show though, and I want to move on to 2 fun things real quick. The first one is best finals games you can remember. Just not go back and research. If I just said, what are the best games of the finals you remember? Like, what comes to mind? Because I believe this one is going to come to mind without having to research or think. I think for most people that watch this one, they will be able to say in 10 years, you're going to be like, you remember that Knicks comeback game? This will be one you remember all the craziness. For me, the ultimate one is probably the Cavs-Warriors Game 7. The LeBron block, just how close that whole game was. You could actually say games 5, 6, and 7 because they were all classics. But game 7 with the LeBron block, just the Kyrie shot, the incredible the level of play in that series was through the roof. I think everybody would remember that one. Heat Spurs game 6, the Ray Allen shot, I think is another one that that series also like this one. The level of play and execution was just so high. The teams knew each other so well that it just was haymaker after haymaker. I think this one is in that tier. If you go back, you could say Lakers-Celtics game 4 was the big Celtics comeback. Yeah, that was a big one. I think you could say Lakers-Celtics for me game 7. This is the Kobe 6 of 24 game, Ron Artest tip, but it was such a battle of wills. The numbers don't do it justice. That was just a who can stomach enough pain to get out of the series with a win. That one to me. You have the Dirk comeback game 2 of Heat Mavs, where he gets the layup at the end, which is an all-timer. That's a huge comeback game. Heat Mavs in 2006, Game 3, the Dwayne Wade takeover, shoots a million free throws, but also just dominates the clutch of that game. Lakers Sixers, Ty Lue stepping over, Game 1 stepping over, Iverson stepping over Ty Lue, all-time game. If you were there for that one, you remember how big that was. And then Cavs Warriors Game 1, 2018, also I also remember this one, but this is the J.R. Smith game. But what I remember about it was that the Warriors had an A-plus game, and LeBron played one of the most perfect games I've ever seen, and it still ended in a loss. But I'll always remember that game because I just felt like that was perfect basketball for 47 minutes and 50 seconds.
Yeah, LeBron reached a level in that game that I'm not sure any player has ever reached in terms of just confidence and control of a basketball game on the highest stage against literally the apex of competition. A couple others that I would add, these are a little bit lower level, but that I think are ones that stick out to me. Game 4, Steph in Boston in 2022.
Yeah.
And it was not so much a crunch time game, but just Steph just kept hitting crazy shots all game long. That was nuts. 2019 Game 5, you have Kawhi Leonard just hits midi after midi after midi that ends up looking like it's going to ice the finals. And then Stephen Clay just snatched the game back with 3 big threes down the stretch. That was like an absolutely bonkers game that I can think of off the top of my head. Game 2, Cleveland Golden State in 2015. This is the one where LeBron spikes the ball. another like
And then
super.
gives the look. Is this the where he gives the
Yeah.
look at Steph? Yeah.
It's this. It ends up going to overtime because Steph goes crazy at the end of regulation, but LeBron and the Cavs end up pulling it out in OT, and LeBron spikes the ball and just lets out this like primal roar on the court. That was a crazy one too. Man, there've been a lot of classics. This is such a good question.
And I kind of like, I see people going back, and everybody obviously different ages. I'm 42, so I kind of started at 2000, 2001 basically. I'm talking about like my adult life. I obviously the flu game, there's a lot of these games you can throw out. I'm almost just limiting it to ones that I can personally recall experiencing.
Yeah, as an adult. Yeah. Same for me.
Yeah, personally.
For me, it's like late 2000s is where I start to kind of like, because again, I was born in 1991. But yeah, like
Spring chicken over here.
I'd say 2012 Game 2 Heat Thunder. That was a really good one where the Thunder had that crazy comeback, and then LeBron ends up maybe not fouling Kevin Durant there along the baseline. That was a really good one too. There's just been a lot of classics, but I will say that this as a series, I can't remember a series in my lifetime where every game was this close, this competitive, and this crazy at the end. Because even when you go back through some of those great series, there's a lot of blowouts.
Yeah.
A lot of like
This is the last round. That Thunder Spurs series was great, but the games were actually not close for most of them. So
exactly.
And I saw somebody in the chat earlier when I said this game could easily, or the series could be 4-0. Someone said, "You sound like an idiot." Like, look, man, everybody can have their different take. The games go the way they're. I'm not trying to take anything away from the Knicks at all. I'm so impressed with this Knicks team. I'm just saying all 4 of these games have come down to execution in the clutch, shot making in the clutch, and you rarely get that in a series, let alone the finals, where all 4 games came down to pivotal moments that could have swung it either way. On that note, we have to go to our Kalshi Market Watch to close out the show. This is obviously presented by Kalshi. Kalshi really is cool because they visualize, even if you don't like to place a position, it is cool just to look at the line and see how it moves game by game. I've actually really enjoyed doing this. It's kind of a nice way to kind of monitor these things. New York falls to 80%. They were 81% earlier. They're 80% right now. If we go to the Market Watch, though, we're talking about the player we're most keyed in on for Game 5. So, JT, let's start with the Knicks. Which player is most interesting to you heading into that game?
Into Game 5. I'm going to go with Brunson, specifically because I do think the Spurs are going to clean up some of the mistakes they made defensively that led to open shots. And I think while Brunson had a big scoring game in this one, I think it's going to be even more of an emphasis on his ability to take and make tough shots in this particular game. I know there's this feeling like the Knicks are just going to roll up into San Antonio and maybe close out this series. I think the Spurs are going to win big in Game 5.
That'd be the best outcome for me. Again, non-partial, don't care who wins. I want this to go deep, at least 6. I'm not even saying 7. I don't want it to end. I want us to get at least 2 more games of this. I would love to see a Game 6. You could talk yourself into this, man. Like, you win easy in Game 5. If that happens, I think it would be great just from a reset, confidence, exhale perspective. Game 6 then becomes so important. The energy in Madison Square Garden will be unbelievable because you will feel like that's the chance to both do it and to do it on the home floor. So I would love it. What about on the Spurs side?
Spurs side Game 5, I'm looking at Wemby. Just because I thought he had just an absolutely brutal second half last night. Easily his low point of this entire playoff run. It was worse than some of I made a big clutch mistake thing, because it was like for an entire half, he just couldn't make a shot and was getting kind of picked apart defensively. And just, I think that I will say this, I expect Wemby to be awesome in Game 5. And that is a testament to what I think is his mentality and his overall, just like he has, Jackson, my producer at Hoops Tonight, and I were talking about this morning. It's like the thing I'm worried the least about with him for his future is his mentality. I just think he's clearly a psychotically hard worker, a crazy competitor, a great leader. It's the thing I'm worried about with him the least. I'm actually more worried about things like injuries or if he becomes a good enough jump shooter or that sort of thing. But I just expect Wemby to come out in Game 5 and play one of his best games, if not the best game of the series.
As much as I agree with you about the Wemby portion of this, I do think there's just something interesting about the arc of hyper-competitive players and failure early. Because I think we always say sometimes you have to taste that and it drives you. But there are a lot of players that were tortured by that drive. The drive, if it was a good thing, but then you become so obsessed with it that, I mean, and I'm not saying Jerry West is obviously before my time, but every one interview he's ever given where he looks back on his career, it's not excitement or toughness, it's torture. He talks about all of the failures and like how much he's still tortured by them. And I am curious if how much this will sting and what it does both to your drive and to your confidence. Only time will tell on that front. We got a couple of super chats to get out of here. What are the people saying today, Atticus? What do they want to know? Busy says, Mike Brown using 2 ball handles in the NBA Cup to Kolek finish that game with Brunson. Nothing new. Mike Brown just went back to what worked. I think I understand this. He's going to 2 ball handlers, I think is what he's talking about. Mike Brown has done this. It was Tyler Kolek at one point, but now it's Alvarado.
He ended up going to Clarkson in this series when Clarkson had some good moments against the Spurs in the regular season, and Kolek did too. So I was curious if he would at some point, but Alvarado's just a better option than Kolek at this point.
One of my main takeaways about the NBA, like it evolves in the playoffs, one of my big takes about what's evolved this year is the need for secondary ball handlers. And I think there's a part of you wonders, did it have to be really good players? Like AJ Mitchell's unbelievable, J-Dub, and you have these guys. Oh, Jose Alvarado is not like a great player. In fact, ball handling is one of his primary values. But he is showing that maybe that's it. Like I wonder if the Alvarado mold of player is going to become more valuable, not because they're going to play a ton of minutes, but because when you have them, it offers a flexibility in a playoffs that you really need. I think there's something to it. What's the last one we got? JMK says, thanks, guy. Great analysis. Who should win the most choked player for the series so far?
It's got to be Fox, man.
Yeah, man, I think you're right. I will say, though, Fox, heavy is the head that wears the crown. If Wemby makes one of those free throws, they don't lose. If he makes both of them, they win. And when he went to that line, to me, it just felt like an iconic moment of let's see what happens here. Fox, though, people have been posting the lowlight reel of Fox. Some of the plays, man, when you go back and watch them in order, and you're like, my God, that's 3 or 4 unforced turnover plays, a couple horrible shot attempts. The ISO you were talking about where he gets the ball poked out, then dribbles up, and then just does the James Harden. You're like, what are we doing right now?
Oh, my God.
I think it is him. Shouts to Josh Hart, who narrowly avoided being
he narrowly avoided it.
JT, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it. Always good. Guys, Hoops Tonight has film breakdowns. They always are doing post-game analysis. JT, the best in the biz doing those things, man, immediately after the game. And we hope you enjoyed this one. Tim Legler was courtside for this, and he was calling the game, and he was in the chaos of all of it. I cannot wait to talk to him tomorrow at 10 o'clock Mountain Time, 12 Eastern, and get his perspective on that one and what he's looking forward to when we get to Game 5 on Saturday. So make sure you're locked into this channel. We also have our player prospect videos up. Everybody in the lottery, we have a 5-minute draft profile on them with video and everything else. You're not going to want to miss those. Those are really good to get you ready for the draft, which is less than 2 weeks away. So go check those out. Hit the like button on the way out. We'll see you guys.
We all silly like the mayor.